Welcome to Vantage Point Podcast, a podcast brought to you by NWR Communications and 92 Studio. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.
G'day and welcome to the latest episode of Vantage Point. Today we have Alf Ianniello, the CEO of ASX-listed Codan, listed under the ticker CDA. Codan's a security, defence and communications tech company that has its roots in South Australia. It's been quite the journey for Alf, joining the company when it was in what you call a transition phase and it dropped to under $4 a share before him and his team have executed strongly on its strategy and acquisitions to sit today around $14 to $15. Alf's genuinely a good guy and it was a really enjoyable conversation. And with that, I hope you enjoy the episode.
Alf, thanks very much for joining us today. We met in this office probably 2 years ago when things were looking pretty hairy.
Yep.
Stock was just dipping below $5, dipped below $4 in the end. Tell us, first of all, your journey to Codan and sort of the rocky start, and we'll get to the happy ending at the end.
So our journey to Codan, I've been, I'm an engineer, so I started my career out in engineering with BAE in automotive, and then spent some time in the States, and that started my management career. So at the age of 28, came back to Australia and became an MD of an automotive company, and then became the CEO of Detmold, a large South Australian-based packaging business, and I was the CEO there for around 14 years. Learned a lot off the owner, Rodney, a real entrepreneurial guy, and so I learnt a lot about squeezing value out of things. And then took a year off after COVID because, we had a pretty busy period during that time at Detmold. We set up the largest mask manufacturing facility in the Southern Hemisphere. So I decided to take a year off, and I always wanted to get into the ASX world and test my wares, and was given the opportunity by the chair, David Simmons, to actually put my hat in the ring, and was lucky to take on the role.
And if we sort of just drill in a little bit further, it was like you killing Bambi when you joined. The stock was top 5 in every fund in terms of holding. It was a market darling. There was a bit of worries around Africa. You sort of reset the messages, as every sort of new CEO does in terms of building a better, stronger Codan. Can you just sort of tell us how was that in terms of it's not enjoyable sitting opposite a fund when the stock's down 40% post the AGM, when you're sort of resetting things. How did you sort of go about that?
You got to have belief that the organisation and the structure that was there at the time had the ability to grow. I just looked at that moment. It was a difficult moment because I was a new CEO, and coming from the private sector to the public sector, no one knew about how good or bad you are. So the only way you would demonstrate that is by getting runs on the board, and so the first runs was like a duck, just a golden duck. So so we just sort of sat down as a leadership group and say, where we're going to get to, in the next 3 to 4, 5 years, and we worked our way back, and we sort of plotted it, and like I said, we just stayed true to the course because we did think the acquisitions were solid. They just needed a bit of time. We were trying to rebuild a business away from Africa. So if you look at the fundamentals, selling a couple of detectors in Africa, the fundamentals really were always a bit shaky. So in a lot of ways, I'm glad it happened in my first 6 to 7 months with the organisation.
So if we look at it now, the stock, I think you joined, it was about $10 or something, and it already come off from sort of 20 and then dropped down under 4, sitting, whilst we don't pin everything to the share price, it's sitting now at 15. It's been an almighty ride. Can you just sort of explain what you brought into the business in terms of obviously the acquisitions and probably the African sort of worries was a blessing in a way in terms of diversifying away from that?
I think what I've brought into the business, I'm a big believer in a concept called leadership from the future, where you create the future state and you work all the way back. And working all the way back at Codan at the time was diversifying away from Africa. sort of minimising the Minelab story and
Yep.
maximising the comms story, and then trying to work out what we needed to do with comms to actually demonstrate real value. So if you walk into my office, there's a little graph on the wall, and it's got 2 numbers on it, and that's really how the building a stronger Codan strategy started. And now it's been filled out with a lot of more documentation and pages. But so really brought direction, made the direction quite convergent rather than sort of scattergun, and really focused on key things to deliver at a metric level. And the key thing is just listening to the market, which was pretty positive learnings for me. There's a lot of smart people out there, and I remember meeting you guys, and and I think you just said to me, just rip the Band-Aid off, because it was death by 1,000 cuts even prior to that AGM, and that's why you saw the slide in the share price.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if we just drill further into Codan, particularly as a business and the different sort of segments of it, can you just give us a bit of a 3-minute pitch?
Yeah, so the 3-minute pitch, we're a diversified tech company, very good at commercialising IP, market leaders in metal detection, gold detection and anti-mining detection through our Minelab brand. Zetron does command and control software, fairly much biased in public safety, so we do 911 call centres in North America. That's the major market. But for the Victorians in the room, we also manage Vic trams. So that's
that's why my tram was late this morning.
Yeah, could have been. It wasn't our issue. We just monitor and direct. So and then we have tactical communications, DTC, and that's really built off the old HF business. But we do a lot of small radios for military use, drone use, law enforcement, and broadcasting.
And in terms of the acquisitions that you've made since you've joined, what are they, and what sort of, how do you look at acquisitions in terms of, what's the acquisition strategy, and how important is it integrating culture, and can they be standalone, sort of bring them in that same umbrella, etc.? Yeah,
we've had a lot of those questions because obviously Roadshow Week, a lot of questions about why the integrations or the acquisitions have been successful. I put a lot to it that we actually embed the Codan culture quite quickly. That whole can-do attitude, customer-driven approach. So that's been a real positive through all 6 acquisitions that we've done. And secondly, the lens for me is very, very basic. When you look at Zetron, we're only trying to increase the recurring revenue. And when we look at DTC Tactical, we're looking at just getting more sort of repeatable revenue streams. We haven't got a lot of technology gaps. So the filter in once you receive a SIM or you approach somebody, it's very quick.
And you talked about commercialising IP, just in terms of innovation and whatnot. What's the sort of philosophy internally, driving new products?
Yeah. So we spend 10% of revenues on IP or R&D. So the real concept with that spend is just trying to protect the 5 to 10 year horizon, and making sure that you've got something that your competitors don't have. That's really been the philosophy. They all got their own robust business cases, but history tells you, if you follow the Minelab story, nobody's been able to come close for a decade. And once we relaunch a new technology, it will be probably another decade.
Yeah, exactly. So, And in terms of the sort of classify, you do different things with five eyes and whatnot.
Yep.
How often are those sort of projects or jobs classified and whatnot?
They're probably they're coming up a lot. We do a lot of covert work with the agencies. We've got a whole sort of software type small business in the US that's all classified, so it's ongoing.
So. And have you gone to the Pentagon before?
I haven't been to the Pentagon, but I've been to some of the agencies' headquarters, which has been interesting.
And in terms of defence, along those lines, you think of the behemoths in Lockheed Martin and whatnot. How does a small South Australian little micro cap on a US scale compete against these?
Oh, you just got to find your niche, and you just got to be a subsystem within a subsystem within a system, and so you just got to I think with the niche we've got there is the products that we can offer are, the best in class, and they're not going to be able to develop those products. They're more probably larger system integrators,
and they're slower to move as well, I guess.
They could
Yeah.
be, but different market segments and different sort of profit profiles and margin profiles that we would look for.
And just on that point, in terms of revenue and profit profiles, can you just talk us through the last result just out, and what sort of 25?
Yeah, so we had a pretty solid result, came in around 550 million. That was up significantly over last year, up around 90 million up over last year.
So it's probably not just a solid result.
No, yeah. And the profits were up at 81 million, up from around 65. So so we were actually to extract value, and that's the Codan story. We are a growth story.
Yeah, and squeeze everything out.
Squeeze everything out. Not to the detriment of without creating future value, but. I thought it was a great result. Comms businesses grew organically by 16%. With the acquisitions, they grew 19%. So it's been it's been positive.
So you talked about your what did you call it in terms of the leadership style or your leadership mantra?
Leadership from the future.
So how do you you talk to that, but how do you manage the sort of senior executive team? And because how many employees are there now?
Over 900.
That's a lot of employees.
Yeah.
How important is it to maintain the culture across the whole organisation?
Yeah. I spend a lot of time on the road. I make sure I get into most of the international offices and spend quality time there. So people don't see me as a CEO; they see me as Alf, another employee there. I'm quite regimented on my contact points with the senior exec. So we ensure that we have we're talking consistently, and you got to get FaceTime. I think this whole Zoom is good, but it's very transactional. It's not natural.
No.
So getting FaceTime and getting with the execs for some quality time is always positive. So I just, in July and the back end of June, out of 5 weeks, I spent 4 weeks in the US.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it makes a big difference. And in terms of attracting and retaining talent, how do you go about that? How important is that to the business?
Yeah, that's important. So one thing I did when I first joined, I actually brought on a HR executive. So Codan didn't have a global HR executive. So we do have one now, and promoted from within, May Lane. And so we've done a lot of work on people mapping, talent mapping, succession planning and development.
You're not talking yourself out of a job already, eh?
Hey, no, but it's important. No, it's important. You need good people around you to elevate performance. So different than, a sporting. I'm a big sporting sort of analogy guy.
Blues man,
but you look at the dominance of guys like Pep Guardiola and just the sheer way Ange Postecoglou goes about his business. You got to keep it. You got to have great people there. You got to keep everyone on their toes. I think is really important.
Not getting too comfortable.
Not getting too comfortable. So. It's you can incentivize people, but if people haven't got their heart and soul in the story, and I think one great thing about the leadership team that I work with, they're committed and they believe the story. They believe the strat plan, and it's just not a piece of paper or a document. So I think that's 80% of the battle.
And when you talk about the leadership team and exec team, we often talk about the importance of having bench strength behind the CEO. What can you talk to there in terms of who sits behind you?
So we've got a long-serving CFO called Michael Barton.
How long has Michael been there for now?
20 years.
Solid stint.
He just finished his cricket career with Hope Valley Cricket Club. So the running joke is the leading run scorer for Hope Valley Cricket Club. He is like an oracle, the running joke is, if you don't know, just ask Michael. But he's been a really great support for me coming into the role. We've got 3 execs in the States that run the 3 P&Ls, one being Paul Sangster, a new guy called Ben Harvey, and Scott French, and they're all based in the US, so they're right at the coalface. And then you got Daniel Hutchinson, another new recruit. So we brought in a banker to run our M&A.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been very, very good, you know. And then we've got May Lane, who's doing the people stuff. So pretty small team, quite close-knit too, you know. So, you know, we know how to have a laugh and we know how to work hard as well.
And just on the M&A front, do you find, the feedback from funds and whatnot, because you've been able to implement, integrate these different acquisitions, and they've been, arguably crackers, the market's sort of backing you to do more of the same?
Yeah, they're definitely backing us. They're looking for us to do more. We just need to be prudent in size.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're active. You know, we're looking. We've been involved in some processes and we've missed out, and it's just time and effort.
And what's the sort of view? Is it better to do a chunkier one, or because then it's not in terms of size, but you can get distracted by doing 5 or 6 and you can stuff up a couple of them, right? Whereas if you do 1 or 2 properly, it's much.
Yeah, I think we've sort of lifted our eyes a bit on this. So we've done 2 big ones, a few small ones. We're sort of back in the big one stages and probably do a couple at any one time. The way we're set up, we could manage 2 acquisitions at one time because we got fundamental business units that could manage you wouldn't do 2 in a business division, but you could do one across, or 2 across the business units.
No, that makes sense. And in terms of Codan, we talked about FY24. What does sort of FY25 look like? What does success look like from a financial perspective, but more so from a qualitative perspective?
Yeah, I would say, success for me is that we keep growing the comms division at that 10 to 15%. I think if we can, tweak a bit more operating leverage out of the comms, that would be successful. On the other side of things, what success really looks like for me is you want to ensure that FY26 is locked down. It's just that forward-looking approach to actually ensuring there's enough in the tank to go again. We got some great product development, so making sure we lock that down and finish that this year is going to be really important for FY26. If we can nail an acquisition, I think that'll be good in FY25. And so there's so much activity on the go at the moment, but financially we're heavily focused on the growth profile.
And with these sort of podcasts, we like to try and get behind the people in terms of understanding who's running the company, and obviously the market's backing you and your employees are. What family, kids? You're obviously a blues man.
I'm a blues man, obviously Italian heritage. So
Lygon Street?
Not Lygon Street. Most of my dad's mates, instead of migrating to Adelaide, they migrated to Melbourne, and so that's why I became a blues fan. So follow Nord in the local league in Adelaide, but fundamentally being a soccer guy all my life. I was fortunate enough to play for a team called Adelaide City Juventus. But married to a lovely person called Maria. Met at university, got 4 kids, 3 boys and a daughter. They're all forging their own careers. My boys are a bit older than my daughter, so she's only 12. So and I got one son's graduated in property developing, and my other 2 sons have gone down the sort of investment banking commerce route at uni. So that'll be interesting.
Looking to be drafted into the M&A team. M&A team at Codan. There's a succession plan.
So I'm a pretty low key guy. Still got the same mates I went to primary school with. Right. Most of my mates
loyal.
All my mates dropped out of school in year 10. I was the only one that went through to year 12 and university, and but still the same guys, and catch up for a beer, and nothing too fancy.
No, that's what we like. And when we look at Codan in 3 to 5 years, we talked about FY25, FY26. What's the sort of vision?
I'm all about creating value. So for me, market cap and size and scale is where we're looking.
Yeah.
So we just want to ensure that we've got a a really strong global tech business, and in all the markets we're in, you know, in the two comms markets and Minelab, that we're still in a dominant position, and you just want to be have better scale, you know, and hopefully we can move up the indexes.
That's what we want to see.
Yeah,
Alf, it's been a pleasure working with you. Typically, the good guys don't always win, but it's good to see that you're winning at the moment without getting ahead of ourselves.
yeah.
I can see why the market's backing you, and you've got a great team behind you as well. So well done on
Thank
what
you,
was
Simon.
a bit of a bumpy start, but we're just getting started.
Yeah, just makes you better.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alf. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Simon.
Good
Thank
work,
you.
mate.
Cheers.